Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. It's your business to do something with your life financially, to get successful, to make a difference. And that's what we like to talk about every time we have our friends on, the regular contributor, Ellen Paine, from richclub.org. Rich Club is awesome. I love their values. I love what they advocate. And I even like Ellen, but I usually want a minute with him in the room. But Ellen, I love what you guys doing. What do you got going on? And tell us a little more about Rich Club, and then introduce our audience to an old friend of the Price of Business show.
Great. Well, first off, I want to just say I want to introduce myself to you. It's like, who is this man sitting?
Yeah, who is this guy?
Security. I haven't seen him in a while. We've been having a lot of fun, and now he's here. It's like, oh dang, the substitute teacher's gone. Okay, so first off, my name is Alan Paine. I'm with the Rich Club, as he said. It's the Realty Investment Club of Houston. We're a trade association who tries to help train people who come out of the world not knowing what they want to do with their lives and how to get wealthy. So we help give them the tools to do that. We also help people come in and learn how to buy houses, fix them up, and flip them like they see on TV. By the way, the TV guys lie. And today, my guest here he's just a perfect example of this. Blake Yarborough's here. Blake, tell us who you're with.
And by the way, it's not a perfect example of someone who lies. It's a perfect example of the right way of doing it, I'm sure.
No, exactly. He's one of the people who's doing it.
I was afraid he was calling me perfect. I'm like, I'm perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect
I've known
example.
Blake long enough to say, that's not true. You're a great guy, but I wouldn't call you perfect.
I'm sure you mean that the best possible way.
Possibly.
Possibly. Well, hello, I'm Blake Yarborough. I've owned a mortgage company, Capital Concepts. Our concentration is finance and investment property, from hard money loans, conventional loans, and bank portfolio loans when you become a real investor, as I like to say. Also, I'm one of the top home investor guys in America. I do that through my company, Property Remedies. I currently own 120-something rental units. I've got about 10 rehabs in play right now, and I am a new franchise owner of a Remax that I'm starting to build up.
By the way, I want the audience to know I'm playing with our guest. He's forgotten more about investment real estate than I've ever known, and so it's all good fun. I'm always impressed by your knowledge.
This is one of the most knowledgeable men I've ever been with. And I went to lunch with him one day, and we went for an hour, and I was there for 2 hours just in awe. This man is just so intelligent.
I wonder if anybody can see me blushing on the radio.
It's pretty bad.
It is. It's getting kind of hot in here from the blush. So Blake, can you make sure that you have a contact info for the people?
Absolutely. The best way to contact me is through my main office phone number, which is 713-651-9500. And my mortgage company website is 4smartmoney.com. That's the number 4smartmoney.com.
That's an awesome site. I'm looking at it right now. Talk a little bit about, where people should really start. And I loved what Ellen said at the very beginning. You've got all of these kits and how to do it on TV, and they're a dime a dozen. I wish they cost only a dime, but they don't. They often cost hundreds of dollars. And you look at it, you get them, and you look at them, and it's like you don't even know where to begin. And that really is the fundamental problem when it comes to starting real estate investment. You got to know where to begin. Talk a little bit about that.
I will, and here's the deal. I come from a finance background. Like I said, I've had the mortgage company 16 years. What I'm going to do is say something, then I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. But basically, I believe somebody needs to get educated on all areas of real estate and build your team. But finance in particular, most people think that you have to put 20% down to buy investment property. That is absolutely not true. Just this week, actually Wednesday, I bought a house with $3,100 out of pocket in Kingwood. That's by using a hard money loan, and then I'll refinance it into a bank portfolio loan since I have a whole lot more than 10 properties. But I'm controlling probably $50,000 equity with $3,000 out of pocket. And really knowing what financing tools are available and then having sources to find in your properties, that's really how you get started. If you educate yourself on that, you don't need all these books, records, and tapes. Join a good association or groups or multiples. That way you get it with like-minded individuals that are have the same common goal. A little quick story about me is back in 98, everything was going fine. At the end of 98, all my peers in the mortgage business were going out of business. Well, So I bought 4 properties at the end of '08, November, December '08. And those were, I only had one rental property, and that was a property I lived in before that, years before that I just kept. Well, February '09 rolled around. That's when that Dow dropped to about 6,500. And I looked at my wife. My wife had quit her dialysis nursing career. I had a 3-year-old baby and a 1-year-old boy. And I was like, honey, I don't think I'm going to make it. So at that point, I had been financing everybody else with buy and hold properties. I had probably $50,000 in the bank at that time, and I figured, well, if I'm going to have to shut down my mortgage company, I'm going to buy as many assets as I can. And so the more assets I can, the more I can survive, you know. So I was either going to file bankruptcy or make some money. Well, fortunately, on a positive note, it worked out. But but during that time, you know, I felt like a failure as a husband and a daddy, that I couldn't provide a certain lifestyle for my family, it's just a lot of pressure was on me. But during that time, you know, my wife was talking to a headhunter and all this other stuff. During that time, I was refinancing 10 of my properties, 12 doors, with a local credit union that used to do lending. And she noticed that in that 6-month period, once I had these things refied, that there would be roughly $5,000 a month in cash flow coming in. She's like, Blake, that's what I would make if I was bringing home money as a nurse. So all of a sudden, my wife went from being a nurse to being a property manager.
Yeah, makes more sense.
And, you know, and the rest is history. And she was managing our properties to about 60. Now then we brought Cheryl on now and keeping properties all over the place. But it's good. You know, real estate, now I'm comfortable. No matter what happens, I have the assets and the cash flow to do what I want when I want.
Very good. Your question there, Ellen?
Yeah, my question here really is, we're going to, I'm trying to think here. Do you have a quick question on him?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I want to give that website one more time. Give it to the audience real quick.
That's 4smartmoney.com. That's the number 4smartmoney.com.
Yeah. Let me ask you then, you know, you said you have over 100 and what properties?
It's like 120 something. I don't think it's quite 130.
Do you also, you know, and your wife is heavily involved tactically, it sounds like, with the company, but I would assume with something that significant, you also have a lot of property managing involved beyond just what you're doing out of your home. Talk a little bit about that.
It's probably about 140 doors if you count stuff in rehab and everything else. Well, we have our property manager. I do have... I've kind of changed. I did have 20-something laborers working for me full-time at the summertime. Now I have about 8 or 9, and then I'm subcontracting stuff out. I have Mark's, my GC, kind of watching over everything. And so, yeah, I'll have a little infrastructure in place at this point.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Alan?
Well,
question?
The question here is, this obviously, you're after your story, it's obvious that you have done the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where now you can sit back and no matter what happens in the economy, you're fine.
You know, real quick, here's one of the little things that I want to say is, you know, it's the wealth building aspect of buying properties. For instance, I feel I've tripled my income. I've tripled my net worth, my income. 3 times I've increased my net worth versus my income every year for the last 5 years. But let's just real quick say a guy makes $30,000 a year. How long would it take him to save $30,000 a year?
Right.
But if he just went and bought one house, there's basically a savings bank for $30,000.
Right.
So if you take that and multiply that out, I think that could be life-changing for the average person.
That's a modest annual income.
Right.
You know, that's a decent, modest annual income. Imagine you start adding 3, 4, or 5 of those. It's incredible.
Yes.
Got to wrap it up on that point, but it's phenomenal. Alan Paine, he is a regular here on The Price of Business, and you can see why. He brings great guests like Blake Yarborough, an old friend of the program. You can learn more about our good friend Alan at richclub.org, which, by the way, the event listing is amazing. Always something going on, and I encourage you to check it out, and I encourage you to learn more about Blake at 4, smartmoney.com, including a pretty informative video right there in the very front when you go to the page. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here. It shows up over there at usdailyreview.com, and this is The Price of Business.